There are many famous sayings about love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love conquers all. But does love have the power to heal? High school friends turned college sweethearts Zach and Maddy would tell you it does. For 24 years, Zach was a healthy, athletic man. Then he started experiencing sharp chest pains and noticed he had a swollen lymph node in his neck. So he went to the ER and was diagnosed with stage 4 blood cancer.
It was probably like the worst nightmare I could ever think of. I felt like the walls were closing in on me. Everything got like really fuzzy. I just kind of felt like our whole entire future and life was over at this point. Zach and I never ever thought cancer would ever be on the table. It never crossed our minds.
I just felt like a lot of anger, and I just felt like it wasn't fair. I think we were about like a year and a half into our relationship at this point. Like everything was really perfect. We just got our house, we just got our first golden retriever, and just getting that diagnosis just really like took like everything away from us.
6 chemo sessions and 5 months later, Zach went into remission. But the doctors cautioned there was still potential for relapse.
So we did know that his cancer could come back with like a flip of a coin.
To celebrate being cancer-free, Zach and Maddy decided to take a trip to Panama City Beach, Florida, their favorite vacation spot.
I had bought an engagement ring for her.
I was sitting outside and I was just watching the waves and kind of just enjoying the sunset. And Zach was acting a little nervous throughout the day. And he came up to me and had asked me to stand up, and he had gotten down on one knee.
I just thought it was like a perfect setting for us because the beach is our favorite place.
When he proposed to me, he had just talked about how his whole life he had never believed in soulmates. And that the day that he met me and over the challenges that we've gone through when he was diagnosed with cancer made him believe that soulmates do exist.
The couple spent the next 5 months enjoying their new engagement as best they could, not knowing that their bliss was to be short-lived. One night, Zach lost feeling in his legs, and the couple learned that what they had feared most had happened. Not only was the cancer back, this time it had spread to his brain, and there was a tumor on his spinal cord.
We had met with our neurologist that night, and he pretty much told us that if we don't operate you in the next 24 hours, you're probably going to be paralyzed for the rest of your life. That was a really hard night. I think that we both just couldn't believe that it was happening to us again, and it was happening in the worst way possible.
They had sent me home that night, and I couldn't walk into the house, and my father-in-law and Maddy had actually had to drag me into the house. And I remember looking down at my feet, and they were just like dragging across the garage floor, and that was really scary.
And although surgeons were able to successfully remove the tumor, he lost all feeling from his chest down and couldn't do anything without assistance.
So he had to go to a rehabilitation hospital and relearn how to write, relearn how to tie his shoes, relearn how to use the bathroom, relearn how to do every single daily task. And at this point, he's also going through chemotherapy again. So he would start to make progress and then get hit with chemo and then like take 2 steps back.
After months of hard work, the rehab started kicking in. Zach was getting stronger. Then he found out that chemo had stopped working.
You kind of like lose hope a little bit.
The chemo had stopped working twice now on Zach. And so prognosis-wise, it wasn't looking great. So at this point, we were really defeated. We were exhausted.
The next day, Zach started a new type of chemo, and his colon ruptured. Doctors made a 10-inch incision from the top of his abdomen all the way down to his groin. They didn't know whether he'd even make it through surgery, but defying the odds again, he did.
That was probably the hardest part of the whole journey was that month. And I pretty much had lost all my fight, and I really wanted to give up. They had to put a tube up my nose to, suck out the fluids that were constantly building up, because if that wouldn't happen, I'd constantly vomit.
We really didn't know how much time we had left.
The couple decided to make the most of the time Zach had left and planned an impromptu wedding in 48 hours on the oncology floor.
We didn't want to lose out on the opportunity of being able to marry each other. I wanted to make sure we didn't have any regrets. I had my wedding dress already picked out and bought from when we initially got engaged. The nurses had come in on their day off and they did my hair and my makeup. and they safety pinned my dress to me because it wasn't even hemmed or tailored to me yet. They put together bouquets and a cake, and they played our wedding song as I was walking down the hospital aisle with my dad. The elevator doors had opened up, and I see my dad standing there with tears in his eyes. And I looked down the hallway, and there were so many nurses and doctors and other patients and their patients' families there. And everybody was cheering me on as I was walking down the aisle. And it was just one of the most surreal moments. Zach was sitting there, and he was sitting in his wheelchair, and he was so skinny at this point and so weak, and was hooked up to machines. He was on a feeding tube at this point and was getting chemo. And I just remember he looked so handsome, and I just was so happy that we were able to get married. I felt like we had made it. I felt like this was what we had been dreaming of, and being able to marry my best friend that day was the best day of my life.
The wedding really put a lot of life into me. Yeah, seeing her so beautiful in that dress walking down the aisle really gave me the strength that day to actually stand up and do our first kiss. Going into the wedding, I was like extremely weak on pain pumps and everything like that. And seeing my wife walk down the aisle in her beautiful wedding dress, just so happy to marry me. It gave me like a lot of drive and fight for the rest to come. I forgot about everything else, and I was only focused on her and getting married.
Cancer had taken over our lives for over 2 years at this point, that not having cancer on our minds for that day was amazing. And it just felt like we were normal, and it felt like a real wedding because we got to have our first dance together. And even though he couldn't stand up, we still danced around him.
Shortly after the wedding, and after almost a year at the hospital, Zach was finally released. He's being monitored closely, but he's no longer receiving treatment, and the cancer is gone.
I really owe my life to her and keeping me alive and keeping me in a positive mindset throughout all of this, and keeping me in a good fighting spirit to get through everything.
It's made our love a lot stronger, and it's definitely made it unconditional. There were days where he was a lot stronger than I was, and there were days where I was a lot stronger than he was. So I think that we both kind of fed off of each other.
Modern medicine is miraculous, but so, Zach and Maddy would tell you, is love.
That's just something I've done this whole time, and it's just constantly think about Maddy and stay and fight for Maddy, stay in this world for Maddy, because she needs you.